Hey, what up, YouTubers? It's your boy, the Visionary, and welcome to another episode of Firesidechats, bringing you the latest in current events and news that matter to me the most. Today is going to be a conceptual show idea, and the title of this show is The Fallacy of Morality. And what I mean by that is that, hold on one second. What I mean by that, in particular, and I don't mean morality itself is a fallacy. I mean, what I really mean is the fundamental meta principle underpinning morality is the fallacy, right? So, let's define in our own words what morality is, right? So, morality is a ideological paradigm, that establishes behavior, actions, and ways of thinking that help you to deal with situation, events, or occurrences in your life, right? So, you go throughout life and you're going to go through a lot of shit. And, if you were not living in a social structure, right, your natural inborn instincts would take over, and it would present actions that would help you to navigate through those events, situation, occurrences, right? But since you live in a social structure, those actions that you take that are governed by your instincts, desires, and wants or needs, I should say, might become destructive of other people and yourself. So there go morals, or I would say moral laws or mores, are set and designed for two particular purposes. One, so that you do not present a harm to other people and yourself. And number two, more fundamentally, they are established in order to protect the integrity of the system, because you live in a system, a finite system, and we are finite creatures, period. Now, within the system, if you have different classes, right, you have lower class, middle class, upper class, and the lower classes, they get government benefits, you have free housing, and most importantly, opportunity to go up the social hierarchy ladder. And you have middle class, you houses, jobs, and entertainment, and most importantly, self-fulfillment. And in upper class, same thing. When all needs, necessary needs, and wants are met within each particular class of people, right, there's no need to break the moral code or the laws of the system itself, because everything is taken care of. The only reason why you would break the laws and codes of the system itself is because you are not getting what you need or what is necessary. Period. So indirectly and specifically directly, that's what morality does. Morality is just there to maintain the integrity of the system. Now, when there is a aka buildup of corruption in the system, and most importantly, we need to understand what the corruption is and how to define that corruption, right? So before we get into the next point, we have to go, what is the corruption in the system? Immorality. And what's immorality? It's when people do not follow the social norms, laws, and mores of the system itself. Now, why would people do that specifically? People would do that for many reasons, right? But fundamentally, it stems back to the meta principle that I talked about before, underpinning what morality is. Not what morality is, but what is based on morality, right? So fundamentally, morality, as I said from before, it's a way to protect the integrity of the system. But the other aspect of it is that because of your instincts and desires and your wants, your natural impulse to react to a certain event, situation, or occurrence, sometimes it might be destructive of other people and yourself. Hold on one second. Now, as you exist within a system, there are people who, through random occurrences or whatever, who might break their moral social codes, and by doing that, cause damage to other people. Now, that damage to these people that who follow the rules, fundamentally spread that virus, spread that corruption. Why? Because we are taught that we should not truly confront from a natural perspective, meaning if someone punches you, we should punch them back. No, we're taught to run away or not to hit them back, or how to redress an evil or a wrong done to a person, period. Now we have certain methods by which we go about that, but these methods are unrealistic, they take too much time, and more or less they help to perpetuate the corruption in the system. So when the animalistic aspect of ourselves is suppressed so much so, whenever we are met with a crisis of consciousness or crisis of morality, the animalistic aspect of ourselves, the part of us that wants to win or have its desires fulfilled, breaks through and effectively makes the choice for us. Now, when you consistently have a situation where people do that, that's where the corruption builds up within the system, and that's the reason why people decide not to be moral, not to follow the morals, not to, live up to what they have been taught. Period. Because living up to your morals in a system that's both corrupt as well as people who do not live up to their morality, it becomes a detriment to your survival, and that's specifically what it is. So as you move on, now it behooves us to say, okay, so how do we fix this crisis of consciousness? How do we fix this the moral breakdown of society? Well, again, we have to define the meta principle behind why we are moral, or what is the purpose of morality. And a lot of people think it's be moral for moral's sake. No, that's not what morality is mainly for. That's a fluff concept. People need to understand you need to define the world in subjective absolutes, meaning absolutes that can be subjectively interpreted to be one or the other thing, period. I know that sounds like a clash of ideas or doesn't sound like an actual definition, but bear with me. The reason why, from a religious perspective, why problems continue is because people try to define or use spiritual means to fight physical problems. You do not use spiritual means to fight physical problems. You use physical means and physical solutions to fight physical problems, and you use spiritual means and spiritual solutions to fight spiritual problems. Period. That's mainly what it is. Now, some people mainly will define spiritual in the sense that morality is the link between the spiritual and the real world. So whenever there's a moral dilemma within society, people will define that moral dilemma as a spiritual issue, and ergo you need to solve the problem through spiritual issues. No, that's not going to solve anything, period. That's not going to solve anything. That's not going to feed my kids. That's not going to help me pay my bills or pay my rent and shit like that. No, that's not how it works, period. Though I understand why that is. You know what I mean? I understand where that concept came from, but it's not going to solve the problem specifically in and of itself. So now we have to define again, how do we deal with the breakdown of society and the fabric of morality? Well, number one, redefine what morality is. Number one. Number two, reconstruct the meta principles that build upon what morality is, right? So instead of telling people, as I said before, that you're moral for moral's sake, no, you're moral because there is a specific, definite, objective reason why you're moral, to protect the integrity of the system. And the more corruption spreads, the more immoral people will become. So how do you define and stop that corruption? Well, hey, if a person punches you in the face, you punch them right back, period. What is that going to do? Well, what's that going to do is that, number one, you are directing your anger and your frustration at the actual source of what's there fucking with you. And then after you deal with that, you're not directing your anger or your frustration or your violent tendency towards someone who does not deserve it or some weaker party, period. That's another instance, and that can be applied to other instances. If you're dealing with a boss, you stand up to the boss like, yo, fuck you, stop fucking with me, blah, blah, blah. Same shit. Family members fucking with you, same thing, period. Once you address those two fundamental principles, teaching people what it means to, the real reason why morality is important in society, and then number two, the actual meta principle governing what morality is, or more particularly, what governs how you act and how you behave and why corruption sets into the system, then you're on the way to actually repairing society and the moral fabric of society, and hopefully preventing more corruption from building up, period. But fundamentally, it's the reasons why we have these problems is because there's a flaw in our ideology about shit. We have this whole, we need to suppress, ignore, or particularly destroy the animalistic side of ourselves, period. And that's the problem. Humans are violent. We need a vent for that violence. We need to, if someone's fucking with you, there has to be a vent where we can fight, period, and deal with the shit like that, period. You know what I mean? Like, or if you want to say something to someone, you say it directly with no strings attached or whatever. Or, you know what I mean? There has to be direct vents for our id, before our desires, instincts, and wants, in order for us to keep balance with that in the spiritual self. Once you do have that in the balance with the spiritual self, then you're less likely to have a buildup of corruption within the system. Alright, thank you for listening to the video. Appreciate it. Stay tuned for the next one. Peace.